Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the protests are still on. It's not only when people are on the streets waving placards and singing and marching that you have protests. You know, Nigerians have been protesting bad governance, particularly in recent times when the intensity of attacks by virtue of the nature of government policies and programs, which have amounted to more or less vicious attacks on the livelihoods of common, ordinary working people. I've elicited a lot of protests. There are different forms of protest. There are passive forms of protest. There are even criminal forms of protest. Like, we all know that when you have massive youth unemployment, for instance, you are bound to have a lot of crime. It's a form of protest. So when you have widespread crime, widespread banditry that we've had in, all over the country, situations where kidnapping and people take to extreme antisocial behavior, these are also expressions of protest. You also have protests that take mute forms, and people just complain. You enter into any beer parlor, people are complaining. You are in a bus, people are complaining. You are in the market, people are complaining. Those are protests, you know. But what we have had is an attempt to canalize the collective discontent of Nigerian people around government policy choices into an articulated platform. That's the one everybody now says, oh, they say they want to do protest, and government begin to get jittery and all of that, you know. And that's what we have had in the last few days since the August 1 protest started. And we all saw the response of the state, you know. For the first 4 days, the government decided to ignore the cries on the streets, which clearly, unequivocally, narrated tales of hunger, tales of deprivation, tales of unemployment, tales of mass suffering, and so on and so forth. Those situations were brought into sharp relief in the course of the protest. We even saw a young man who stripped himself naked to illustrate the fact that he has been stripped naked by a system that has deprived him of livelihood, that has deprived him of his humanity. So government got jittery. They made all sorts of attempts. There were veiled threats. There were intimidations. And by the time the process eventually started, we saw government trying to use court injunctions to restrict movement and so on and so forth. A lot has been said about that court injunction that in Lagos State that tried, and I think we had in a few states as well, that tried to restrict the protest to certain parts of the city when they knew that they were not going to be able to stop people coming out on August 1. Of course, eventually people came out, and like I've said before, they expressed their discontent and they make their demands very clear. Among other things, they want petroleum prices to be reverted. For me, the issue around petroleum products is one of the saddest manifestations of bad governance in Nigeria, because Nigeria happens, to the best of my knowledge, one of the major OPEC countries, oil-producing countries, that imports refined petroleum products at the level that we do. I do know that you may have situations where some OPEC countries have to import certain, because when you say petroleum product, it's wide. There are 44 products from crude oil. So your type of crude may not give you everything you want. So you may need to import. That's why the fact that you are an oil producer. So I know Somebody might come with the argument, no, no, but they also do import this and that. Yeah, that's true. But Nigeria is the only country, OPEC country, and I think this can be checked out, that have non-functioning refineries that is producing zero petroleum product and depend almost 100% on imported petroleum product. When you say petroleum product, we are not just talking about PMS, diesel, and so on. We're also talking of all sorts of other products that are used by industries that are products of that derive from crude oil. You know, the propylenes and all manner of chemicals and additives that are used in petrochemicals, that are used in pharmaceuticals, that are used in textile industry, that are used in cosmetics industries, and so on and so forth. All of these things we have to import because our refineries are not working. Our tire manufacturing companies are folded up because our refineries are not working. So to be talking about subsidy or no subsidy, import or no import, for me, is, especially in the 24 years of this so-called democracy, that we are not producing, we are not refining our crude locally, is one of the saddest, sharpest statements of how incompetent and absolutely self-serving our ruling elite have been. So all the spectrum of that industry has been so grossly mismanaged, so that, and all we can point to are a few billionaires there and there that are feeding from the carcass of what used to be one of the most vibrant petrochemical, petroleum refining industry in Africa. So it's sad that we are where we are in that respect. And now we're in the ping pong of we are removing subsidy, we are not removing subsidy, there is no subsidy, there is subsidy. These are issues that should not even have arisen in the first instance. If Iraq, that came out of war, can refine its petroleum product, refine its crude, if Libya, after the devastation of the bombardment of Libya and the destruction of the entire country and its infrastructure and its refineries, could come around, revamp the refineries, and are not importing refined products, I think this one issue that Nigeria needs to be more searchlight and ask more serious questions. Now, talking about, for me, the issue about subsidy or no subsidy is thin. I think what we should be talking about really is, what is the regime's strategy plan in the oil and gas sector? We've heard that they want to rebuild, they want to revamp the industry. Of course, we've been hearing that. And of course, billions of dollars have been voted for that purpose over the years, in the past 3 decades. The Tinubu government has also committed itself to revamping the refineries. They even told us, with a lot of fanfare recently, that Port Harcourt refinery has been revamped. We want to know concretely what's their plan in both the upstream and downstream, in terms of exploration, in terms of even mining the crude in the first instance, because our outputs are also dropped very sharply, because there hasn't been any serious investment in that in terms of exploration. So what are the plans? What are the plans for local refining? What are the plans for stopping theft? Because a large part of the, as much as outputs has reduced, a large part of what's being produced is being stolen, and we all know it. It's been stolen. So what's the government plan to stop that? To stop that bleeding, that enriches a few people at the cost of 230 million Nigerians. What are they doing about that? For me, those are the real questions we should be asking, So how do you want to improve output, crude output? How do you want to add value to our crude in terms of local refining? What's your plan for refining revamping the local refineries? What are the timelines? If you need have such plan, what are the timelines? What resources are you committing? How are you sourcing these resources? Those are the issues. If you need to, get investors involved, how are you going about that? These are issues that are not being discussed. These are issues that are not being addressed. We are at that ephemeral level of we remove subsidy, no, that's all, and so on and so forth. For me, those are symptoms of deeper problems that we aren't addressing. So people are also saying the exchange rate is, you must stabilize the exchange rate regime. We can't go back to Babangida's firm and Naira keeps going down every day, and until they have to be hot to eat. Now you are taking us back to that era. Again, people are not raising serious questions around that. The promise of the government that the willing buyer, willing seller of forex and all of that, you're just taking as face value. What are the implications for production in short time, in long term, and so on? So these are and of course, the so-called removal. We all know that it hasn't even worked. The promise that you remove subsidy and thereby save a lot of waste and leakages, because we know that right now government is subsidizing, and otherwise IMF will not have had any reason. The IMF chief will not have had any reason to say Nigeria should stop subsidy even after subsidy had been removed in quotes. We are subsidizing, and it's simple logic. If the exchange rate is now about 1,500 naira, and that's been conservative, and you are still selling around 600 and so on and so forth, it's not reflecting that rate that marketers have to import in naira, So the naira value of refined products is not what's being sold. It's not what we are getting in the fuel stations, and that's the truth. And we are not even, and there's a lot of ambiguity and opacity. We are not even getting the truth. What's the real landing cost of this thing? And how much is government subsidizing right now? So the problem of subsidy is false. If anything, if we have the right figures, I suspect that the rate of subsidize, that the subsidy regime has even increased because of the gross devaluation of the nation. And these are the policy consistency and contradictions that marked those two pronouncements by Mr. President on swearing-in day that you are removing subsidy, and at the same time, you are tinkering with the foreign regime. I don't think there was any thought given to it. That what you are saying in one breath is being obliterated by the statement that is following it. So to the extent that the protest has allowed Nigerians to ventilate their concerns around this issue, for me, it makes it a very huge success. And that the protest took place in complete defiance of all the threats, the gaslighting, the intimidation that we had, even before the protest commenced. And after the protest also started. It's a mark to the courage and resilience of Nigeria to insist on their basic democratic right to peaceful assembly and expression despite all the odds. And of course, we all saw the killings, the beatings, the higher talks that were unleashed on the streets to intimidate protesters. We also saw people were beaten up. We also saw people even coming out, to say, yes, we are giving money to do to counter this protest, And so we saw all of that, which all demonstrated the desperation of the regime. And the president's speech, which a lot of people describe as an anticlimax, is also very interesting. That the president came out to address the nation after about 20 people had been killed on the streets, and the president was not going to even mention, was not going to make any form of reference to those killings, that the president was not even going to own up to some of the obvious failings of his policy choices. It's also very interesting. And of course, the recourse to recounting litany of policies and all of that. And I was telling one of my friends, I said, but we've had all of this so many times before. You know, they are going to do this, they are going to do that. Under the Jonathan government, we had the full complement of the World Bank people, Soludo and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, coming with all manner of so-called palliative programs. You win, and this and that. You know, these are issues that do not address fundamentals. And this tokenism, which in another forum I refer to as turning tokenism into policy. You know, this politics of tokenism, market money, Jeep for the survivor fund. So there's the other one during COVID we had. You know, at some point we counted 21 intervention programs managed by the office of the Vice President, Osinbajo, before the humanitarian ministry took over when Buhari was in power. 21 different intervention programs. The central bank was doing its own. Also all manner of grants and so on. Where have all of these things landed us? By official admission, by the record of the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, it has only resulted in multidimensional poverty for 133 million Nigerians early last year. And I'm sure that figures must have sharply increased in the light of the policy choices of the present government that we have had to endure since May 29, 2023. So, tokenism as heart of governance has proved its utter worthlessness. From the days of IBB's People's Bank to Shuopi and all this nonsense. To start with, you see that these are just knee-jerk responses to crisis situations. They are not well articulated. There are no clearly benchmark goals and objectives that we want to achieve with all these things. And so it just became money for the boys. So you establish those schemes, you put those who campaign for you during election and other political jobbers to manage it. They see it as poise of office. That's the problem. Since 1999, Nigeria has been treated like a conquered territory. Because, like Professor Claude of blessed memory, you know, remarked in one of his celebrated works. He said, elections as an indicator of democracy in Africa actually shows that there is no democracy has not taken off in this continent. Because elections are warfare. And when people win elections, like they are won a battle. And the land becomes the conquered territory. And the people becomes victims of soldiers on rampage who have just won a battle. That's what we have had. So you have these programs announced because people are complaining. And then you put foot soldiers that help you to rig elections and so on and so forth to manage them. And they see them as poise. Monies voted for NDDC, where are they? Money voted for the all manner survivor fund, vulnerability grant, market money, and so on and so forth. Where are the beneficiaries of all those programs? Where are the monies? Always, it has always been a few people smiling to the bank, you know, and doubling the tragic consequences of the overall bankrupt policies that are imposed on Nigerians by the subsequent government we've been having. So the truth is that the neoliberal trajectory has failed woefully. The evidence of the past 24 years is that nothing, absolutely nothing, has worked in all of these policies. The promise of, oh, when we privatize, when we commercialize, we will have foreign investors, has not happened. Rather, we have had deindustrialization. Rather, we have had disinvestment, massive disinvestment, and it became even more mad in the past 1 year when over 70 industries folded up because they couldn't cope with the policy shocks of the government. So one thing the protest has done is that it has helped Nigerians to ventilate their frustrations. It has brought the issues more to the fore, and it has raised the challenge of the need to address the fundamentals. Yeah, the Russian flag thing, I think is a lot of, it's much ado about nothing, as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if the reaction would have been the same if it was an American flag that was being. But more fundamentally, it says something to the crisis in the Sahelian states, the upheavals we have had in those places, and the fact that our people of northern Nigeria have close affinities with those people, whether we like it or not. And what's happening in that place also affect their own political consciousness. And don't forget, when President Tinubu, chairman of ECOWAS, announced sanctions on Niger Republic and the other Sahelian states, you know, people in the border communities who survive on cross-border trade with Niger suffered a lot. I know because they are my members. I had calls from Katsina about how people were literally dying of hunger because they lived on trade with Niger. Niger depends a lot on even products of some of our industry, including soft drinks and all of that. You know, massive number of people in Kano, in Katsina, and all these places depend on the trade with Niger and all these simple commodities. And the border was, and they make the sanctions were effected. I was even made to understand that when Nigeria cut electricity to Niger, border communities also suffer darkness. It will appear as if the distribution was from Niger to them. You know? So for them, the pains of the policy choices of the present government is even more biting than whatever people are experiencing in the South. And so you will understand why they will want to identify, they want to use the protest opportunity to identify with what's happening in Niger, where the Russian flag was first raised. And those people saw it, you know. And don't forget what has happened in Niger. From the poorest countries in the world, that used to be the refrain in describing Niger. Niger is now the 4th fastest growing economy in the world, by virtue of the fact that they sent out France and they took ownership of their local resources. The uranium that used to sell for 0.8 euros is now going for over 200 euros. So people saw those things, and of course they identify with it. So I think Nigerians are not drawing the right lesson from those flags being raised by our northerners. And they are rather also echoing the panic of the government. There's nothing, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing to panic about. It only is showing us a certain direction that some people have gone, and it seems to be working for them. And it's also a warning that if they keep managing things the way they are doing in Nigeria, if they continue to do it this way, there are choices. And people are already pointing in the direction of those choices. I hope the right lessons will be learned and the right changes will be made. Thank you.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.